How did I find my purpose at 27 years old when some people don't find it till they're dang near on their deathbed? That's what we're going to be talking about today on the Logic and Logic podcast. And I hope that through my story, it might help you in your journey a little bit. But I think if we're going to talk about how I found my purpose, there's no better place to start in the beginning. So I'm 27 now, as I said previously. Some of y'all may know if you've been rocking with me for a little second. A lot of you may not know, especially if you're just now tuning in, but I was homeschooled until the age of 12. And then at the age of 12, I began to go to school with other kids. And so up until that point, all of my influences were from my neighborhood, from my parents and my parents' friends or my siblings. And of course, like things like YouTube and stuff. But my influences in terms of people were kind of slim. It was like the same people, the same situations, the same things over and over and over again. And so by the time I got to school in seventh grade with these private school kids, because I went to a private school when I started going to school, I always say this: what was normal to me was not normal to them. And what was normal to them was not normal to me. I was very, very big on respect. I was very, very big on reciprocity. I was very, very big on not letting things slide. And these kids had no, it almost seemed like they had no frame of reference of how the world actually worked. All they cared about was superficial things. It felt like all they cared about was what somebody else thought about them and clout. It was never about, things that matter: respect, love, responsibility, none of that type of stuff. It was just like, oh, who can be, I guess, the most socially dominant? The same things you see in the corporate world today. It's kind of weird. But nonetheless, because I was not used to, or not used, because I was not accustomed to this type of environment and these type of hierarchies and different things, it was very, very difficult for me to navigate positively for a very, very long time. And I found myself in disadvantaged situations emotionally and mentally because I did not know how to make sense out of it. I did not know how to navigate it. And I didn't necessarily have the support to try to figure those things out either. And so from a very young age, I began to see that the things that I was understanding about life, the things that I was understanding about how things worked, is not how they're always going to work out. But luckily, being that I'm not necessarily a person who just gives up or throws in the towel, I fought with it. I tried different things and I battled with different things. And with the help of, I guess, just paying attention to how other people navigated things in different situations and different happenstances, I began to gain certain tools that worked better for me. I began to know how to be quicker on my feet, say certain things, do certain things in a way that would allow me to navigate the space a little bit more comfortable. But even after learning to navigate the space a little bit more comfortable, I still felt like there was something missing. I found myself going to bed at night thinking about what I would have to face the next day. I found myself being up into the early morning playing scenarios over in my head of how I'm going to respond to this and how I'm going to respond to that and how I'm going to navigate this situation if it arises. Half the time I can't even focus on doing my homework because I'm so zeroed in and dialed in on trying to figure out how I'm going to make it through the next day. And even though things weren't going as bad for me as they were initially, I still had a ridiculous weight on my shoulders of trying to figure out how I'm going to navigate all of these things. Just that was just going on in my life. I had a lot of things going on in school. I had things going on outside of school. I had things just, it was just, things kind of felt all over the place at that point in time. Ooh, man. I just zoomed in if you watching on YouTube and that was not on purpose. Let me zoom back out. But yeah, man, things were just going crazy for me and I felt like I had no type of handle on it, even though I had gotten better. And so as a result of where things began to sit, I was sinking into a hole. And I was sinking into a hole at a pretty fast rate. And it got to a point where the weight that was on my shoulders felt almost too heavy to bear. And it was at that moment when I first started, I guess, truly entertaining or understanding or attempting to understand the concept of who God is and the concept of what God is and what that means in relationship to me. And I started realizing this because every single other thing that I was attempting to use as a basis or use as a means to a better result in life literally just was not working. I was trying to be the money man, trying to make sure I had all the things. And that did not work. Your money is only as good until it's not there anymore or somebody else has more. Uh, Trying to be the cool guy or trying to be the smooth guy. You're literally smooth until you do not have the capacity to keep trying to be smooth. I promise you that mess does not work forever. You could be the ladies' man. Oh, I get girls. Da 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 da. I've never had an issue with that. But the thing about it is that is work. That is work. And then also when you tie your image up into that, you also tie your self-esteem up into that. And so how good you are as a man a lot of times will be predicated or linked to who likes you, who doesn't like you, who finds you attractive, who doesn't find you attractive, how they treat you, X, Y, and Z. That's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. And so I'm saying these things and just kind of trying to give you a picture of where I was at that point in time and realizing like, look, money's never gonna buy me what I'm looking for. Girls are never gonna buy me or afford me what I'm looking for. Persona and pride or just looking a certain way to others or garnering a certain type of respect is never going to get me to where I'm trying to go or get me to or allow me to have the peace inside that I'm honestly looking for. And it was in that season where I really started to realize, like, hey, maybe what I am looking for is something that I can actually find in God. Now, when I started getting on that journey, just like anybody else, I began to kind of cling to the things that I had seen or heard or was taught when I was growing up. And so I found myself in a position where I'm getting really, really involved in my church. And I grew up in, I guess you would say, a conglomerate or a practice of Christianity known as the Church of Christ. And within the fellowship, we have what's called song leaders, right? And so, just really loving singing, really loving music, I was like, okay, maybe this is part of my purpose also. So I started getting really, really heavy into song leading and just the whole nine and trying to sing with groups and learning all the different things and trying to get my ear better and just really diving into it type stuff and trying to learn more about the Bible and trying to learn how to study better and or understand better. And it was kind of interesting because when I first even started getting my start in that, I was met with resistance. There was some older guys who didn't like me or wanted to put me in my place or humble me or didn't like how I was going about things. Um, and that was just a whole another situation to navigate. But I didn't let that stop me. I kept pushing for it. I'm like, yo, this is what God has for me. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be successful in this because this is what God has laid out for me. I was so sure about it. And so I began to continue on that path. And then I started getting good at production and mixing and mastering. Y'all see my instruments and my board and just all the different things. Like, and I got very, very good with production and making songs, writing songs, X, Y, and Z. And I started kind of going places with it. I started getting invited places. I started being able to enter different rooms that I had only dreamed about being in when I was a kid, only to realize that even once I made it to where I thought I wanted to be, there was still nothing there. You get to these next places, or I got to these next places, these next rooms, or these next stages, and realized it's literally filled with people, and these people are literally the exact same people that I was dealing with when I was in school. They just older. It's literally grown kids doing the exact same things, being jealous, being gossipy, being spiteful, being in competition with one another, flexing their shoulders. There was literally no difference between the people, even inside the church, no difference in the people that I was encountering than the people that I was with in middle school and high school that was just completely throwing me off. And so when I got there and began to realize, like, hey, this mess really isn't that different than that, I began to question myself again. And then I began to question God again, like, okay, if this is what this is, then what do you really have for me to be doing out here? Tried to put down all like the girls and the money and the persona. I tried to move away from all of that. I've tried to really lean in and push into what I thought you had for me to do. What do you really have for me to do type stuff? Now, around this time, I've gone off to college, right? And so I've gone to college, but I'm still coming home on weekends. I'm still going different places and traveling different places with different singing groups that are going to this church or that church for this thing or that thing. And while I'm doing all of this, I'm still just a little bit foggy on like what I'm actually supposed to be doing. And it just so happens that on this journey, I got into a conversation with one of my guys, and he's a good guy. But he had asked me a question. We had got into a debate. I think the question that was posed is who's the better creation, man or woman? And then I had posed my argument, I think out of Genesis, and I was just saying that there is no greater or worse creation, but there is literally just a difference. And that man and woman were created to work together. It wasn't necessarily meant to be one better or worse, but they're both necessary. And we went back and forth and we got into it or whatever. And then I was posed the question, would I believe anything that I believe if it was not taught to me as a child? Like, if I wasn't taught the things that I believed, if I wasn't given those things by somebody else, would I believe them? And when I was asked that question, it really threw my head for a loop because me, I'm a very, very transparent person. And I'm a very, very integral person, or at least I really would like to be, and that's what I attempt to do in every situation. So when I was asked that question, I had to look at myself and really ask myself, like, hey, if I wasn't taught the things that I was taught, would I believe them? And then when that question was posed to me and I began to go down the list of the things that I believed and the things that I thought I understood and the things that I thought that I knew, I found that I really didn't know those things for myself. I only knew what I was told. I only knew what I was given. And so because I got to that point where I didn't really know why I believed what I believed, it sent me to a spiral that left me very, very confused and left me very, very angry. And the reason why I was angry is because I felt as though I had allowed myself to be lied to, and I felt like I had allowed myself to be fooled. I felt like I had allowed myself to be manipulated. I felt like there were people who were supposed to be guiding me and taking care of me and just different things that I hadn't trusted myself to, that kind of had me out here looking stupid. And I don't even think that that's necessarily the case, but that's how I felt in the moment. That's how I felt in that season. Like, I've been led astray and then thrown out here looking like an idiot, quoting things and saying things and professing things that I don't really understand. And then when I really started to think about them, like, these things don't even really make sense and add up. And so from there, I had went on a journey where at one point I did not believe kind of anything. I believed in the concept of God, but I did not believe in the Bible. I did not believe 100% in Jesus or even the existence of Jesus. And I actually went so far as to the point where I wanted to disprove the Bible and I wanted to disprove that Jesus existed, or at least existed in the way that people said he did. Because I was like, in my head, I'm thinking, if I can disprove these things, then not only can I shut up every single voice that ever led me astray, but now I can actually begin to find or build my life on facts, on what actually is true, what I actually can grab hold to, what I actually can validate. is real. And so when I started getting onto this journey, I'm not gonna lie, I began to obsess over it. And that's one thing a lot of people don't know about me. Is that when I get into something, I get really, 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 really into it. And so if I'm studying a topic or I want to know something about it, it's almost like I can't sleep and I cannot rest until I know everything that I could possibly want to know about it or think to ask about that thing. And so I was just studying. I was up till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, night after night, sometimes late to my classes, sometimes having to come and do these things. I don't even know how to put it into words. I think it makes sense. I was reorganizing my life around the acquisition of knowledge, or I guess understanding at that point in time. And it was just a crazy journey. But what I end up finding was different than what I thought I was gonna find. I began to find exactly how closely the contents that are inside the Bible are linked to things that actually happened in history. I began to find that not only is the Bible more so like a library than a cohesive book, but literally each, I guess, letter, book, or piece of genre what's the word I'm looking for? A liter each little each literary genre or piece of literature within each literary genre that the Bible holds, written at the time that it was written, is directly correlated to events and things that actually took place in history that can be verified, or that can be, yeah, just fact check. Not fact check, that's a bad way to look at it. But that could be, yeah, I'll just say verified. That can be verified by things outside the Bible. And when I began to see that, I was like, okay, but bump all that. All of these things could be exactly what they say they are. Everybody has books, and there's a lot of history books and different things. I need to see if what this stuff is saying about this Jesus guy is real. And so I began to go down a rabbit hole trying to see, okay, is Jesus real? The Jesus that we believe in, is he fake? Did he really ever walk the earth? Da 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 da. And so when I began to start getting down to the nitty gritty of that, and seeing just all the different perspectives, but also seeing like the historical evidence, like the Roman history records, the philosophers of the time, like the Ptolemies, and the Pliny the elders, and like even Herodotus accounts. Shoot, what else can I think of off the top of my head? Uh Ignatius, I think, had some literature also. But nonetheless, I don't mean to go down that rabbit hole. That can be another episode of the Larger Than Logic podcast if y'all want me to show you how I was able to see that Christ actually existed, died, and then resurrected outside of the Bible, and then also correlated to the things that are inside the Bible. But nonetheless, when I found out that Christ actually lived and that he died and that he actually rose, and it's kind of difficult to say that he didn't given the evidence. It kind of led me to a point where I was like, yo, well, if this mess is true, and it's not a mess, but that's just how I talk. If this mess is true, then literally, whether every single last thing in the Bible is true or not, because this is true, literally everything that I'm saying about the gospel, everything that I'm saying about what the prophets wrote and then coming to pass, this mess has to be true. And so whether every single last T and I was dotted perfectly, if every single last detail is to the T, like, oh, he was wearing a colorful coat, oh nah, it was just two colors, like, that mess doesn't really matter, because all of it is leading and speaking to this. And then this thing actually happened. And this is the thing that actually matters, because on some real stuff, just thinking critically, if we had the Bible and say the Bible was perfect, right? And when I say perfect, I mean perfect in terms of literally every account was down to the second perfect, in terms of course, history, lining up with history. But but the only part that was like allegorical or never really happened was the uh death, burial, and resurrection, or even the birth of Christ. Say that the birth, death, burial, and resurrection of Christ was just allegorical or never really happened or an embellishment. And literally everything else was completely accurate historically. There would still be no reason for our existence or for kind of anything. We really wouldn't be able to pin it back to anything than maybe like a weak, or I wouldn't say a weak, but a very, very open ended concept of God, because literally any other way you try to trace back, you get lost. And I tried. I looked into Hinduism, I looked into Buddhism, I looked into Islam. Everything will lead you to a rabbit hole that doesn't necessarily come to an end. Because I'm not trying to disrespect anybody's religion, but at the same time, it's not very substantiated when you look at the history. But back to this conversation. But when I realized that even if there isn't necessarily perfect line for line, perfect historical line of this, that, and the third, da, 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 with the Bible, which is pretty darn close until you get into certain parts of different genres and how things are written. But that's another conversation for another episode. Once again, because we do have Christ, because we do have evidence, and then because it actually happened that Christ lived, died, and rose again, now we're in a situation where, regardless of what anybody wants to put on the table, we are called to align our lives with what actually took place. It's like one of those situations where, hey, this sacrifice is here for you and it happened whether you like it or not. And whether you want to pay attention to it or not is up to you. But you deciding not to pay attention to it, you deciding not to give it your time and attention, is going to lead you to have to deal with consequences whether you like it or not. If you break the law and you get caught and the cops go and try to take you to jail, whether you think you did or not, whether you decided to take accountability or not, does not matter. You go into jail. And it's kind of like the same thing with the gospel. It's like, yo, this mess actually happened, and either you're going to get right or you're going to have to get left. And once I kind of realized that, I was like, with integrity, of course, I'm like, okay, even more so than me understanding that there's nothing else better that I could do in my own self-interest, being that I would like to be a person that's doing the right thing, I actually had the desire, like, yo, well, now that I actually know that this mess is true, I'm with it. Like, let's buckle, like, let's hop in the car, like, yo, let's ride Christ, let's get it popping. Like, I was on it. But the thing that also became kind of crazy is realizing that even after I was able to see Christ clearly for myself and begin to truly walk with him for myself, there was a disconnect between me and literally everybody else around me that I had grown up with. And even in the church, I even feel like till this day, there's a lot of disconnects because they were all taught to view God through this certain lens. There it goes again. They were all taught to view God through this certain lens. And they were all taught to view the Bible through this certain lens and just have all of these I don't say preconceived notions, but just all of these passed down notions and thoughts that I've kind of found to not necessarily be completely false, but to not be completely on base. And because of how ingrained those things are, it's like nobody is, I don't say nobody, but most people, they're not really open to conversation or really open to fleshing out why they believe what they believe. And so at times that's left me feeling a little bit alone, or left me feeling like a little bit alienated or isolated, kind of like the black sheep of the family. But I'm used to that mess too. But nonetheless, purpose. When I was able to see that Christ actually existed, is when I began to actually believe and see the significance of what is written in the Bible, specifically the Gospels on to Acts, which was very, very transformational for me. And beginning to see that literally the purpose of my life really is to become as close to the man that God was when he was incarnated as Christ on earth, and really allow my life to be a sacrifice to him, and then also to be an example of him, And hopefully with that example and what I say and what I do, bring as many souls to him as possible, realizing that literally nothing else has any significance. No matter how much money I get, it's literally going to go to somebody else when I die. My family, if they get some of that money, it's going to go to somebody else when they die. My kid, when she dies, it's going to go to somebody else. Literally all these guitars on the wall, if you're watching on YouTube, they're going to go to somebody else. This drum set, all of these mixing speakers, this microphone, somebody else is going to take it, because these are all physical things, and they're going to take it if it doesn't break first, because all these things are going to waste away. And so kind of realizing that literally physical things have no significance. People, the only significance that we really have is within God's will and plan, because what's going to happen, like we just talked about, we're all going to die one day. You can literally fight as hard as you want to save lives, save agendas, da 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 da. We all got to go one day. How much does that matter when we're all dead? That's a good question to ask. That's a good episode, maybe even. But nonetheless, when I began to peep that and begin to see that my real purpose is to get people to the place where I am now, where even after we die, we don't die. Even after our soul is not necessarily in our physical bodies, that it rests on in the presence of God, man. That's what really changed my life. That's what really kind of got me to a place where now I see why things are the way they are. I see how Satan is really trying to work against us and blind us. I see why young men and young women are so confused. I see why things just don't seem to add up and make sense all the time. And it's because we're literally in a spiritual war. And when you're in a spiritual war, of course, physical things are used, but it's not ever going to be in the way that you expect it to be. You really have to be able, well, I don't even say have to be able to, when you are when you're able to inherit God's spirit, you find yourself in a position where you begin to read between the lines better and better as your discernment grows, as your relationship with God grows. But nonetheless, that's how I found my purpose. Literally kind of going around the block, 2 miles up through the tunnel, uh getting lost, turn around, like literally kind of trying literally every single last thing I could have before. It feels like, only to find out very, very soon that there was literally nothing that I could find besides God. It's how I found that my purpose was truly in God. Now, even after finding that nothing really matters besides my purpose inside God, the craziest thing also is that just because I found my purpose doesn't necessarily mean that I've learned completely how to walk in it. The reason why I say that is because even after finding my purpose, and you might be in the same position, there's so many different ways that the cat can be skinned. Case in point, there's people in my position who they devote themselves to be evangelists and go here and go there and bring people to Christ that way. There's some people who choose to use their gift of music, and I've thought about that. There's some people who uh try to really lean into like those things that are prophetic. There's just so many different things that people lean into and try to do, and da 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 da. And it's one of those situations where I I guess I would say I struggle sometimes to know exactly how Christ wants me to skin the cat. And then also I find myself in a position sometimes where I'm truly believing, which I kind of sit and I've kind of settled on, was like, there may not necessarily be just one thing that Christ wants. And I think sometimes that's what's the word I'm looking for? A box that we sometimes put Christ in, or put ourselves in, where we think, yo, we're supposed to be doing just one thing. This one thing is the one thing that God wants me to do. It's like, nah, he might have several missions for me. He might have 20, he might have 10, he might have 2. But the thing about it is, no matter which way I spin it, the only way that I'm going to get to that is literally just by being obedient. And so where I'm at right now, and I've been for a while, is literally trying to place myself at God's feet so that I don't get in my own way from walking in the person or the purpose that he has for me, or the complete purpose. I'm literally trying to remove as much sin from my life as possible, trying to remove as many roadblocks, as many mental blocks, as much trauma, because that's a big thing, as much trauma from my life as possible, so that I have no attachments and I have nothing standing in the way of me being able to truly 100% live for Christ the way that he has told me to. And when I say told me to, I don't mean talking to me. God don't be whispering in my ear like some people say. That's just not my testimony. That's not my testimony. That's not my experience. God hasn't came and whispered in my ear, nothing like that. But from my study, from the Holy Spirit guiding and directing me, from me seeing what He did, from me praying, from me meditating, and really spending that time with God, seeing what He has for me, I've just realized 100%, if I'm still deciding to make bad decisions deliberately, if I'm still deciding to be prideful, if I'm still deciding to prioritize other things that I know he can't get the glory out of, all I'm doing is putting a wedge between me and him, which subsequently is putting a wedge between me and the purpose he has for me. Now, this is not to say that God doesn't use imperfect people or imperfect men. No matter how close to God I get, no matter how close to the example of Christ I get, I'm still going to be an imperfect person. I'm still going to be an imperfect man. There's no way any of us can get around that. But I'm saying this to say that for a person who claims to love God, for a man who claims to be a man of God, we have a responsibility to truly, truly pursue God and pursue nothing first before him, to pursue nothing more than we pursue him. It don't matter if that's in the conversation with our family, with our wives, with our kids, our jobs, our passions, the world, friends, organizations. It does not matter. Christ has to come first. That's just the bottom line of it all. And so I guess what I wanted to really be able to pull for you out of this episode was to kind of show you that, number one, when we talk about this concept of purpose, I think that's one of the biggest questions that any man ever asks himself. What's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? And to be very, very honest, what I'm finding and what I found is that your purpose starts from truly, truly serving God with your life and trickles down from there. Now, how does that look, bruh? It really might be, you might actually have the purpose of becoming a hooper. Say you become a hooper, build a great, like a huge platform, and through how you carry your life as a hooper who knows the Lord, you show so many young men who don't have any father at all what it means to be a disciple while getting buckets. It might be being a school teacher and showing through how you deal with conflict and how you deal with attitudes and how you deal with disenfranchised situations, what the gospel looks like in action. It might actually be you being a preacher or a pastor or an evangelist and showing people what true leadership looks like when God is in the midst. It might be you literally just being a hardworking husband or father and showing your family what it means to be a disciple as you disciple them in the process. There's literally not one way that it can look, but what I am saying is that it all starts and all stems from, like the song says, building your hope, building your life, building your everything on things that are eternal, that no matter if you go today, if you check out, you take your last breath right now, they will go with you. That your family will still be left in the hands of God and be able to follow in the footsteps, whether you're here or not. And so I wanted to give this to you because literally this is the first step, the first building block to you finding the answer that you so earnestly been looking for. And if you would allow yourself to actually entertain that, if you haven't already, it'll change your life. And if you have entertained it, even if you're in the body of Christ, if you have truly believed in who Christ says that he is, right? And you've had the change of mind associated believing and understanding that literally every good thing comes through seeking him. And you've confessed that not just with your mouth, but with your life, and that you've submitted to the baptism that he has sanctioned, bro. Like, if you've allowed yourself to go through these things, now all you really have to do is align yourself. At this point, all you got to do is start walking in the way that you're supposed to walk. And I promise you, bro, I promise you, literally every single last thing that you could want is just gonna start bloop, 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 just falling, bruh. I'm trying to tell you, I did not find my wife until I began to shed. The more sin that shed out of my life, she came into my life. I did not start getting these jobs making more money than I thought I would have been able to make until I started letting that stuff shed. I didn't have any successful business ventures until I started letting that stuff shed. And I'm not saying this like in a prosperity gospel way that, oh, you follow God and then everything is just good. Cause nah, man, it's definitely been a roller coaster. I've had trying seasons all throughout the process. But what I'm saying is, as God changes you, he changes your character. As God changes you, he changes how you think. As he changes you, he changes how you perceive. As he changes you, he changes how you lead. As he changes you, he changes how you communicate. As God changes you, he changes how you interact with others. As God changes you, he changes how you relate to others. As God changes you, he changes the results you get out of life because he changes you from the inside out. And so whether a season is good or whether a season is bad, you find yourself in a situation where things have to be better because the greatest thing that has ever walked the face of the earth is living inside of you. And I can't say it any better way than that. And so if you're on a journey for your purpose, if you're on a journey to find out what you were put on this earth to do, start with saying yes to Christ. Start with allowing Christ to influence every single last thing that you do. The first thing that you'll notice is that the things that he has you doing has literally nothing to do with you. The things that he has you doing, it has nothing to do with you. You're going to find yourself being a servant. You're going to find yourself being used by other people. And you might feel so confused. And it might feel so crazy to you. And it might feel so weird to you. But I promise you, it's literally the beginning of you becoming exactly who you were intended to be. Once again, my name is Avery Taylor. You are watching or tuned in rather to the Larger Than Logic podcast. And I'm so glad you have allowed me to be a part of your journey.